Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be getting started here shortly. Today's webinar will be recorded and sent to all attendees following. Thank you guys so much again, and we're just going to give it a couple minutes for people to join, and then we'll get started. All right, thank you guys again for being here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and pass over to your host, Tim, and we'll get started.
Great, thank you, Haley. Can you guys see my screen? Perfect. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining. My name is Tim Gunther from I Love Compliance. Today, we're going to talk to you about from scattered to streamline in your technology stack and what that means in relation to your POS, your security systems, and everything else. Throughout the webinar, we're going to go over Sweed and Solink will go over in more detail and give you information about impacts of a fragmented technology systems within your cannabis business environment. And we'll end by showcasing some of the examples how Sweed and Solink have combined and integrating with customers and some of the success stories from there. Before I get started, I really want to do some introductions. Again, my name is Tim Gunther from I Love Compliance. We've been supporting the cannabis industry for the last 10 years. And with us today are two great companies and two great presenters. I'm going to go ahead and let Rocco introduce himself and tell us a little bit about yourself and Sweed. Rocco?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to meet all you guys. My name is Rocco. I was one of the co-founders of Sweed. We've been a point-of-sale system in the cannabis space for over 5 years now. In addition to being a point-of-sale system, we really market ourselves as an all-in-one platform for retail. So that means that we provide POS, we provide a full suite of e-commerce tools, including native apps that consumers can download, and then a full suite of marketing tools, including a loyalty program, messaging across text messages, emails, and push notifications, and a whole lot more.
That's great, Cal. That's great, Rocco. Cal, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Solink?
For sure. Appreciate it, Tim. Appreciate you guys having us here and the Sweed team for bringing us on. It's great to be here. So with Solink, I oversee the cannabis vertical for the organization, and a little high-level overview of what Solink is. One of the analogies I like to use is, those AI-powered video tools that's used for like NFL, NBA teams, where the cameras are capturing everything that happens on the field, from super obvious plays to more subtle patterns, right? Just like a coach would use the data that's derived from that info that's largely coming from the cameras to break down like movement and strategy, that kind of stuff. That's similar to how we're using your camera system within your retail business or within your cultivation. So we pair your cameras with your POS data, like Sweed. We layer in AI, and we use that to uncover theft, training issues, and general operational inefficiencies across the business, to try just make sure you can make better decisions with accurate data.
No, that's great, and thanks for that. So let's kind of get into the topic. Rocco, when we talk about fragmented technique stack, right? We're talking to people who are looking at either in the cannabis industry or getting into it. What does that mean? And can you kind of go over kind of why it's important to know what you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So cannabis is an interesting space because there's a lot of traditional technology companies that won't support cannabis operators just due to the nature of legalization at the moment. And as a result, you have this sort of rich history of integrations. You have retailers that are using 5 or 6 different products to power their business from a software perspective, where in a traditional industry, it might just be 1 or 2. And that leads to a couple of different things. One, when you have all of these different systems that are kind of loosely integrated with each other, you'll find that like a lot of the functionality doesn't work exactly the way that you would expect it to. So whether that's inventory or discounts not syncing on your menu appropriately, or customers not seeing their proper loyalty balance online, it's just not a perfect system of integrations between all of these different tools. In addition to that, because these different tools have different ways of looking at the ecosystem and how to perform any process, you end up creating a bunch of these SOPs that are basically workarounds for trying to create something that should really be in one specific system. So think about doing inventory counts on pen and paper or anything of that nature. And then finally, you end up with a customer record in all of these different platforms. So you'll have a customer record on your e-commerce software, a customer record on your point of sale software, a customer record for your loyalty. And that creates a sort of a disparate state of information where you might have some pieces of information about a customer in one system and others in another. And it makes it really hard for you to have a true centralized CRM and understand exactly how your customers are shopping and then ultimately personalize the experience for them. So there's a bunch of go ahead.
No, go ahead. So go ahead, Rocco.
I was just going to say, to finish up, there's a bunch of downsides to this approach, but ultimately all of this comes out of this weird ecosystem that we have in cannabis, where again, traditional software companies haven't supported the space. And so you've basically got all of these different tools that pop up left and right to try and solve individual issues.
Yeah, what I was going to add on to that, Rocco, is a lot of times if you're looking at POS systems, really ask if their loyalty program, if their website, if their e-commerce is actually with them and tied together, or is it separate systems you have to pay for? And as Rocco mentioned about having to re-enter stuff into different systems. Cal, anything to add to that regarding the tech stack?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. Fragmented stack. It's not something anybody wants to, deal with by choice. We hear a couple things at Solink most frequently. So prior to using a tool that's more integrated across systems, it's more time consuming, more tedious. And what ends up happening is people only focus on the glaring issues. So on Solink's side, right, it comes down to investigations into missing inventory, into things related to staff theft. And so when things are really obvious, it's like, okay, I'm going to take the time to use these disconnected systems to figure this out. It might be manual, it might take a long time, but because of the loss that I'm incurring, it's going to be worth my time to do that, which means that a lot of the little things end up, as we always hear, slipping through the cracks. And obviously those issues add up to much bigger losses, not to be too dramatic, but death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. And then of course, the second element of that is that manual elongated process takes away from what that person or that group could be doing with their time that was more effective for the business. So generally speaking, everybody loves being the person who finds theft, uncovers inefficiencies, helps the organization to be more effective. But everybody hates being stuck in what we call footage purgatory, which is just scrubbing through hours of video and data just to piece together what happened.
Yeah, and I think this ties right into like why simplification matters from this process. And our experience has been when you have disparate systems, especially on the POS and security camera system, having to do research and stuff can be timely just because they're not talking to each other or can't get integrated information. So Rocco, when you talk about why it matters, can you kind of go through that as well?
Yeah, so I kind of view this in sort of two different buckets. In the first bucket, a single system will really simplify your operations. So it's going to reduce a lot of the data errors and inconsistencies that you might be used to just dealing with multiple platforms. It'll also allow you to automate a lot of the workflows you have, both in terms of your operation ability, like inventory counts, opening stores, things of that nature, but also in terms of your interaction with the customers. If your marketing platform and your point of sale platform are the same thing, as soon as a customer makes a purchase that elevates them to a higher loyalty tier, you can send them a message congratulating them about that, automatically opt them into certain discounts and kind of benefits that they may have at the store, whether it's a fast line for checkout or something else. And then in the second bucket, you really get a much better understanding of your customers. So I kind of mentioned this before, but I'd like to sort of double click on it. If you have a customer record in all of these different systems, that means that you have different pieces of information associated with the customer's behavior online, with their interactions with marketing messages that might be going out. And then, of course, what they're actually doing in store, what they're shopping, when they're shopping, what they're purchasing, and how they're buying. And putting that all into a single place allows you to really understand what your customers are doing and then make intelligent decisions about the discounts, marketing messages, and other things that you can do to drive revenue for those customers.
No, that's great. And Cal, from Solink's perspective, why this matters, can you add some insight to that as well?
Yeah, for sure. And it's really similar to what Rocco's speaking to here. I think of it in layers, right? It's like with Solink, we have your security layer, surveillance, loss prevention, and then more operational benefits. Again, kind of that analogy of using the cameras to understand what's happening in a sports context, kind of like what we do in a retail context. So when you have everything streamlined, it starts with, okay, I know I'm secure. You know, obviously my security system's set up. It's all on one platform. I see everything's operating effectively, regular health checks, that sort of thing to make sure you're meeting compliance as a baseline. And then that next layer is you're going to get reporting that sends you information that lets you know, hey, these are the areas that look suspicious. This is where you might be losing money. And it's like, okay, I can spend a little bit of time figuring that out rather than, you know, chasing some elusive dragon where you're trying to put pieces together that you can't quite figure out because it's all on different systems. And then the final piece is, all right, I'm on top of my security. I'm on top of my compliance. I'm on top of my loss. I know that I'm okay in this way. Now, what can I spend my time doing? I can leverage this system to dig deeper into how we can generate more revenue, how we can improve the customer's buying process, how can we can be more effective with our bud tenders time or with our managers time to, you know, build margin and generate value for customers. Of course, as that's the underlying goal. So generally speaking, it's not just about saving time, but getting back to work that really actually moves the needle for the business.
No, that's and both of you guys bring up great points when you start talking about the value of Swede, where everything's within one system, and to Rocco's point about simplifying the data interaction between systems, because as stated earlier, you have islands of information. If I have my e-commerce, my loyalty, my security system, and they're not connected or talking, it becomes a challenge when doing investigations and stuff like that. So let's really talk about where Solink and Swede, this smarter surveillance and what that means, because I think when customers are looking at opening a dispensary, or if you have one, you have to get a security system, but don't just get something that you're going to have cameras to meet the requirement. Go beyond that. And I think this is where the integration and some of the things that Solink and Swede are doing together make a difference. So Cal, if you want to talk a little bit about that and how that we could be beneficial to licensees.
Yeah, I'll get pretty practical here and dig into exactly what the integration with Sweed looks like and Solink. So, Tim, as you know, we have a mutual customer that we've worked with quite recently. Her name's Heather. She's responsible for doing investigations at her organization. Prior to using Solink, she was in a position where she'd, you know, pull reports from her point of sale. She'd hop on her camera system, and then she'd be putting in timestamps, trying to figure out when transactions occurred. I'm sure if you're paying attention here and you've done this kind of process, you know what it's like. It can take a lot of time to figure out what's going on within the business. Where did product go? Right? You might even use a situation where you go into your vault or your fulfillment and maybe even highlight a certain item and then wait to see, when did someone move this piece of product? I need to figure out, I need to build a case around what happened to this inventory. It can be a really drawn out process and it's pretty exhausting. And I don't think a lot of people would prefer to spend their time doing that kind of thing. So what we're able to do is we're pulling data from Sweed and we're pulling the footage from your camera system. So essentially we give you a recording device that acts like a brain that we put within your business. It's pulling from the cameras, pulling from the point of sale, layering in some AI, and it's going to allow you to say, hey, I want to find a transaction that meets this criteria. So I type in a bud tender's name or I type in a product, and it's going to pull up every transaction with the data from Sweed and with the video from Solink, and it's going to show you exactly what went down during that transaction. And not only that, that's a bit of a reactive process in terms of finding something that happened. But what you can do is you can set parameters. So the data is not just overlaid on top of the video, it's searchable, it's reportable. You can set thresholds. So you can essentially say, hey, when this type of behavior happens, I want to be made aware of that. And we have an AI layer on top of this as well that we can say, kind of like a ChatGPT function, where you can type in and say, hey, if this type of behavior happens during a transaction, I want to be made aware of that information. And it's going to send you push notifications to say, hey, this is what happened. And then there are workflow tools that allow you to organize the different situations into different buckets so that you're able to keep track of exactly what's happening within the business. And of course, the basic idea is making sure that you're on top of that loss, so we can forget about worrying. We got peace of mind that things are functioning properly, so we can spend our time on higher order tasks that are actually going to generate more revenue for the business rather than worrying about what's kind of weighing us down.
Yeah, I think that's important as we go into really from a standpoint of the one unified system, all these things you talked about. And Rocco, I know you guys have integrated with Swede for some time and have customers that do this. When it becomes that scenario, I'll tell you, customers like to where I'm watching a video agent scans something and the receipt pops up, not just what's going on. So I'm actually seeing the interaction. So Rocco or Cal, if you want to talk about kind of the juggling more, or you're able to juggle and have more control between these things. Anything else you want to talk about on this one unified stack when it comes to your two systems?
Yeah, I'd like to take the opportunity to talk a little bit more about some concrete examples in terms of like what a unified stack means from the retail perspective. Um, so I've talked a little bit about how, having all of your customer data in one place can help you drive revenue or make more efficient decisions in terms of how you put together your SOPs. But to give you some concrete examples of like what that actually looks like. So from a very simple perspective, from just functionality, when you create a discount in Sweed, it's just going to work everywhere. It's going to work in the same way it does online as it does in store. All of your inventory levels that you see online are going to be the exact same inventory levels that you see in store because it's one system. When we talk about how to drive revenue for customers, you can set up automations for win backs or for CTAs. So if somebody has been shopping with you for a while, but it's been a few weeks since you've seen them, you can automatically send them a message and even give them a promotion code. If it's the first time somebody's visiting your site, you might offer them a $5 coupon to sign up. So all of these different little things you can do to personalize the customer's experience really make a huge difference when it comes to driving your top line revenue. In addition to that, go ahead, Tim.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rocco.
I was going to say, in addition to that, there's also a huge benefit to having all of your data in one place and having a single system be every touch point with the customer. So to give you a better example of that, your marketing system will track your opt-ins for customers, whether you're allowed to send the marketing messages across text messages or emails or push notifications. But traditionally, the only way that happens is if you direct the customer to a website where they can maybe sign up themselves or create a separate account. In Swede, no matter where you are, it doesn't matter whether you're getting checked in by a receptionist or being helped by a bud tender at the register, we're always going to show you the customer's opt-in status, and we're going to prompt bud tenders and employees to ask the customer to opt in and to collect that information. So having a single system where all of this is tracked in one place makes it a lot easier to have higher opt-in rates, have more messaging and communication and interaction with customers, and also show them the products, discounts, and promotions that they're actually most likely to take advantage of.
And I'll tell you that to your point about different systems, we've had clients who've had other systems that they have to go in and update their stuff on the POS and then go into a separate system and make updates to the e-commerce because it's not tied into one system, which is time consuming and leads for errors on that way. Rocco,
Exactly.
Rocco, anything to add here? I'm sorry, Cal, anything to add here?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Rocco's point in terms of how Sweed is end to end, on Solink's side, really we have the security piece, we have the outdoor deterrence. So someone walks up on the exterior of the building, you want to make sure that you have a speaker there communicating with them that they shouldn't be in that region, obviously acting as a deterrence effect. I've seen numbers in the range of 70% of businesses with this form of deterrence. There's a reduction of theft or of break-ins around that 70% mark from something like that. So the security piece lives within the same platform as the video management for the camera system, obviously with a number of tools that make managing it quite straightforward. Then you have your loss prevention tools as well. So that's the data integration with your video cameras, and then operations on top of that. Because we have AI on the cameras, which we're going to go over in the later portion of this presentation, we can draw insights from what's happening in the retail space, right? So how long are people engaging with new displays? And is the time spent in front of that new display actually correlating to higher sales, right? So data around what's happening within the retail space lives there as well. So general idea here, of course, is Sweed is end-to-end, Solink is end-to-end with a limited number of systems and integration between the two. Obviously, your operations can be much more streamlined. I think generally speaking, everybody loves building something that lasts and being involved in that process. And nobody wants to feel like they're constantly trying to keep up, right? And so this just allows you to focus on what you're best at and then help your whole organization do the same.
And those are great points. And I think for the audience, the thing to remember is it's not just about having all these systems. It's the employees' time who have to manage the systems and the different things they have to, as Rocco alluded to earlier, I have to write separate SOPs because I have separate systems and they have to do certain things and make sure it's updated. And having that unified stack alleviates a lot of that. So really, when you look at what are the steps to do this? So if you're an existing Sweed customer and you already have a camera system and it's not Solink, can you do something with it? Can you still use it? And the answer is yes. So when you look at your environment and audit it and identify kind of the gaps in your technology, then really just have a conversation both with either your POS vendor like Sweed, or if you're not using Solink, have a conversation with them on what it might look like. So I'll give you some examples. To your point about our mutual customer Heather, who had 2 dispensaries, been functioning for a long time, but had a different camera system, had a POS system similar to Sweed, and they were spending hours and hours. And when we went to them and said, look at the Solink option and bring in the recorder only and replace your current brains of the system, they reused all their current cameras and they reused all of that. So the only expense was bringing in the recorder, but in the end, their monthly payment they were paying anyways for the old recorder was near the same of what they're new. So they're getting all this functionality and start tying in and start actionalizing the POS data so it's visual and all that within the camera system. And not just, what's important to note is these interactions are important because not just for compliance and security, but we've had a marketing team that used the system to where they do heat maps on the POS floor and kind of see where traffic is most concentrated. And they've actually moved displays of their higher margin products to those areas because they realized the other displays weren't getting much traffic based off the technology that Solink has tied to the POS system like Sweed, where you can see that information. And one of the last examples I'll give is security and camera is very important to every state, and you're required to have a security system and you're required to have all these things. But one of the things that happens in operations is that employees start stacking boxes and putting stuff in front of cameras, and no one's really checking that. Using Solink's AI tool, you're able to set up scheduled reports to say daily, I need you to check all cameras to see if there's any blockage. So that way you're getting push notifications on that stuff. So that if someone is in the inventory room and stacking boxes higher than they should be, your team is notified right away so they can make that, so that if you did have an incident, you're not going back to review video, realizing you can't view it because of the block things. And those are just some solid examples of people who are in the industry using the products and how it goes beyond compliance and security from a standpoint of that. Either Rocco or Cal, do you want anything else to add to anything else here?
I mean, I
Nope.
think just generally speaking, the last point on the slide, start small, pilot, then look to integrate with, more locations, whatever the case is. It doesn't have to be a huge overhaul. It's step-by-step process. What is our biggest pain point? How can we look to solve for that now? So I think in terms of moving towards a unified stack, just start small. Nothing groundbreaking there.
No, anything to add to
Yeah.
that, Nico?
I completely echo what Kyle said. The only other thing I'll add is start thinking about your data from day one. We're entering this new age of AI, and these tools are only going to be as helpful as your data is. So as you start thinking about the unified stack, start thinking about the points that are important to you and what system they're going to live.
That's great. We're going to kind of go into the showcase, but I want to remind everybody there is a chat window for you. So if you have questions or anything as we're going through this, as Cal gets ready to go through his portion on Solink and how they integrate with Sweden and some of the things they're doing to show you real life examples, please ask the questions. As Cal alluded to earlier, what is Solink? And it's so much more than just a security system to watch cameras and to record. When you start bringing in their data analytics, their AI, combined with them tying into something like Sweed, where all of that actionable data that Sweed has is now interactive, so I can have visuals of saying, I need to run a widget that shows me my top employees who are discounting the most, right? And that can pull up in videos and stuff, so I can see that on a basically a dashboard. So I'm seeing that on the daily and not having to wonder what's happening. So Cal, I'm gonna have you go into kind of your side of it from a Solink perspective.
Yeah, appreciate it, Tim. So I'll give you the high level quick and dirty of what Solink does. So camera agnostic, first category, we plug in with the existing camera system. So you have your existing retail shop or a new retail shop. We do those builds as well. But let's say you have an existing shop, multiple locations, and you want some functionality that we offer. We basically provide you with a recording device. It plugs in to those existing cameras. There's no rip and replace. You're able to completely update your full surveillance and security system with just one piece of hardware that plugs into what you already have. Next piece, remote access. So cloud-based, so access anywhere you have an internet connection. Unique users. So every user is going to have a profile that's uniquely tailored to them. And our team is going to work with you on a one-to-one basis. The support we provide and the like individual tailored access is a big part of what we do. So anybody who logs in, I log in as a manager. I see my one location and I'm limited to that location. I log in as leadership. I see all data across all locations, and what shows up is what's most relevant to me. And not only what shows up on the platform, but you're also going to be getting push notifications where you can get a text message that says, hey, this thing happened that you wanted to be aware about. Now you know, and then you can dig in or you can send it to someone else in your team to take a look. Next category, video, data, and AI. So these are the three main categories of the actual features that we provide. Video, sometimes we work with clients and they tell us, hey, I'm having issues with, it could be something as simple as, look, I have a motion recording system and I'm in a jurisdiction that requires 24/7 recording. It's like, okay, great. We'll just plug this in and we'll update you. And now you have 24/7 recording on your existing system. Something we hear a lot is, the police have asked for footage and I need to figure out how to get them that footage. They're using like a USB drive, plugging that in, downloading video footage, sending that off to the police. It's literally hours. And sometimes you're buying like boxes of USB drives for this sort of thing, right? We've heard that. Instead, this is like a minute process. You have Solink on your phone or your laptop, and you're able to say within, what time was it approximately? Okay, it was within this window. What's your email? Boom. Now you're receiving the relevant footage. So on the video side, very easy to use, always up, always on. That's our main phrase. And that's our commitment that in terms of compliance, that's our number one priority. And then we layer on these other pieces, kind of like I described earlier. So data coming in from the point of sale, AI on the cameras so that you have full visibility and the data of what's happening in your business. So you're not making decisions based on feel, based on like what I think might be right and what might be wrong, but I'm able to pull that data so I can be certain about the outcomes. And then commitment to success, really a huge piece, and not to like, I don't want to sound too like salesy here, but the idea is we are a month-to-month service. And that's really powerful because it means that at any point you can leave and you can go to another service. We go month to month because it keeps us fully accountable. We install our unit, we plug it into your existing system, we work with you to understand what those pain points are, and we say, hey, it's likely that based on what you've told us, the outcome could look like this. You could be saving this amount per month, and then we test it out. We plug it into your system, we say, let's go. And then again, because we're month to month, we're extremely accountable, and our service is really, other than the features that are our differentiators, our service is a massive differentiator as well.
No, that's great. And Annalise, I see you have some questions. I'm going to answer those towards the end of this, but we'll get to your questions. But those are great. Thanks for sending those in. You mentioned something about making compliance easier. And what I tell clients all the time when we work with them in the cannabis space is you're really in the compliance business. I mean, Sweed as well. I mean, being a POS, they're in the compliance business, of course, video and all that. And one point you made on that last slide is if you want to try Solink out, we had a customer that actually just kept all their existing camera systems and their existing NBR in and brought in the other tool, brought in the Solink to have it plugged in at the same time to see what value they might get. And I tell you, they made a decision pretty quickly because they realized they're no longer just have a camera system. They're getting all these other tools with the information that Sweed provides from a POS perspective and integrating into the cameras where they can now do actionable things. So from making compliance easier, it definitely does, but I don't know if you want to give any examples, Cal?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what state you're in, compliance can differ, right? But at the end of the day, you need to have uptime on your cameras. It's always a requirement. you need to make sure that you're monitoring to make sure if, cameras are not recording, that's a major issue. So because we are a managed service, these are things that we're monitoring for 24/7. You're going to be receiving notifications. You're going to get health alerts that are regularly checking the health of the system to make sure everything's online. And generally speaking, what we found this does is owners go from a position of having to manage multiple things. Again, this whole streamlined, scattered theme. It's like, hey, I got a lot of things on my plate, and one of those things I'm going to have to do is on a daily basis, make sure my security system's working, make sure my cameras are up and running, and just check these things. These are things that we automate for you. So again, you can focus on the core competencies, the main skills that you bring to the table to help your business grow and thrive. We're taking care of those compliance pieces. So the baseline compliance elements of what you need for your camera system, what you need for ongoing support. And then the next piece is inventory, right? Missing inventory. These require investigations in a lot of states. One example would be Maryland, where you can have 0 variances without an investigation done, which is a pretty challenging requirement to figure out how to, build a business model around. So we'll help you out with that. So we make that process much faster and much more straightforward. And then the little GIF on the screen here is showing discounts. And this is a massive area where we find really quick gains. So pretty recently, we had a customer bring us online across, they have about 16 locations. And in one of their locations within their first month, they found $1,200 worth of discount abuse alone. And so that's just 1 month, one feature that was bringing them a massive return in that way. And this was something that had been going on for a very long period of time because they didn't have the resources to figure out, to get deep into the weeds, pun intended, to figure out exactly what was going on in a more granular level. So they were saying, hey, look, there's really obvious discounts here. I can see them. I can go into my point of sale. I can then put in the timestamp and figure out what happened in those moments. But there's a threshold. And you're saying, look, I'm only going to investigate things above this threshold, and I'm not going to worry about the rest. What's 1 or 2% of my overall revenue on an annual basis? Well, that's probably $500,000 in a lot of cases, And so those are the kinds of things that we're helping companies to really identify and eliminate. And then, hey, now you're on top of that. Now you're no longer in a position where, as we all know, cannabis is pretty wild in terms of new businesses opening, businesses going into receivership constantly. Now you're in a position where you know that you're safe. You're operating in a position of strength. And now you can spend your time on how do we find the small details to help us grow in all the directions that are going to be most profitable for the org.
No, that's great. And Rocco, do you have anything to add to, I know you guys have integrated before, anything to add to that?
Don't have a whole lot to add to that, to be totally honest. I think Cal kind of really drove it home. Like you said, Tim, we're also in the compliance business. I think the most important things are being able to accurately see a history of everything that's happened with the item, both from a digital perspective and then also from a video perspective. And tying those two things together makes it very easy.
No, that's great. So Cal, let's go into the next slide, which is, let me just make sure it's coming up. It's a video, and I'll run it.
Yeah.
And,
Well, let me give you a quick rundown here.
Yep.
This is one of our customer success managers. So this is an individual that would be working with our clients and helping them to identify theft within their business. This is a pretty interesting case. What it comes down to is bud tender theft. All right. So why don't you just fire it off, Tim, and you guys can see how the system is used in real time. So this originally had audio. I'll walk you through it. What we've done here is that blue line on the screen is a motion bar. So if I draw on the screen, I can jump to the next time there's motion in a particular area. So what we've done here is drawn that line. There we go. And then it says, okay, I want to know when someone's at the register. If you look at the bottom bar right around where it says the time, it's showing right now where transactions are. In green, it's a little bit small, but the green lines are transactions and the blue lines are motion. So there are some instances where there's motion at the point of sale. So we know that there's a customer on one side of the register, and we know that there isn't a transaction because there's no green bar indicating the fact that a transaction occurred. So you can see right now, there's a whole bunch of motion and no transaction. It looks like there's one a little bit further on, but not at the moment. And so what the bud tender is doing here is they're getting product. They're giving it to the customer. All right, we're zooming in to get better detail, but he's giving product to the customer. And what he's going to do is he's going to take cash, and he does ring the transaction up to the degree where he's inputting it into the system, but he doesn't actually close the sale. So you'll see this in a moment. We got the cash here. And we're able to locate this very quickly, right? This is something that can go under the radar for a long period of time and obviously affect the security of your business. So cash is being handed over. And I don't think this is a whole lot longer. And what ends up happening is, boom, we get the cash. We end up stuffing it just above the drawer, or yeah, boom. Does it go into the drawer? I don't believe it does. It goes just above. Boom, boom, boom. And then a picture. So he gives him his change, bang. Or actually, he might actually put it in the register, but what he does here is he takes a picture with his phone of the transaction. So he has the record of what occurred during that transaction. So he knows the exact amount of cash to take out later. And then he closes that without actually including a closed transaction. So he cancels the order in that moment. So he can go back later to grab that cash. So just by using some motion search tools, using the integration of the data with the camera system, this is something that you're able to locate very quickly. That said, as you can see, there's a little bit of a manual process here still. We're drawing a line. We're trying to wait and see when that moment occurs. These are the sorts of things that we're adding to the platform on a regular basis, where we're able to automate this type of thing. So in some ways, we can automate this now. And within the next few months, this is the kind of thing that you will receive a notification saying, hey, transaction occurred. Someone was on the other side. Oh, sorry, no transaction occurred. Someone was on the other side of the till. This is an instance that you're going to want to take a look at. So that's just one example of how we're uncovering theft in a way that is certainly not available on your typical video management systems.
Yeah, and I think what's important about that is if Sweed was integrated here, you would have seen the receipt come up, and that's where the systems, Sweed and Solink together, are almost making you empowered as a being able to watch your business, to what Cal said, and that eventually it's going to get to the point like we see movement and we see the cash register open, but we see no transaction, which alludes to the fact that that person never finished that sale. So you would have never known as a business owner, although you would have found it in inventory that was missing at some point, but then it's all being proactive on this point. So let's talk about some of the other things that are interesting, like especially with like your AI tool.
Yep, we'll keep it quick. We'll keep everybody on their toes. We got a few categories here: Sidekick AI, people analytics, and blocked exit detection. So with Sidekick AI, what this allows you to do, and we'll show you an example later, it allows you to input a prompt like you would with ChatGPT and ask your camera system what's going on within the business. So one really basic example is, hey, I want to know on a daily basis, I'm going to set up a scheduled spot check. So rather than you having to do manual spot checks where you're like, I'm going to jump on the camera, do a quick spot check, make sure everything's in order, you can just create a prompt, which we can help you with, and which we have pre-written prompts for, that allow you to be notified of the behavior that you're looking for. So for example, open and closing times. Is the store open and operating at the time that it's supposed to be? Did it close at the time that it was supposed to? Sometimes, people are closing early or opening late, that sort of thing. We have one recent use case where this organization, multiple locations, a lot of cameras to have to watch. They want to make sure that there's always 2 bud tenders on staff at all times. And what's been happening is one of those bud tenders will leave for a lunch that's like, hour and a half, 2 hours long, when it should be a limit of, let's say, 30 or 45 minutes. And so by receiving notifications that say, hey, there's only one bud tender in your store at this moment, they can then not have to sit there, check the cameras to verify that that behavior is what's occurring. That's just one example of many. So that's the Sidekick AI piece. Then we have people analytics. Falls into 2 categories. One is line crossing. So how many people are actually coming into the business and how many people are leaving? Not only that, but you can draw it in really any area of the business. So how many people are moving in a certain area? And then you can correlate that movement with sales from Sweed. Okay, so you can say, okay, someone's moving in this area quite frequently, and that does correlate with a substantial amount of transactions coming in from the point of sale. And those are higher margin transactions for a reason that you could delve into further with these analytics. Similar to the line crossing are the zone tracking. So I can draw a shape on the screen and I can figure out how long people are spending time in that space. So how long are people waiting in line, right? How long are people engaging with a new display? And is the engagement with that display correlating to more sales at the point of sale, or is there just really no correlation? So yeah, people are spending a lot of time in front of, you know, your product, but people aren't actually purchasing that product, or they're not purchasing anything on this particular display. However, in this other area of the store, the numbers have gone up quite substantially based on what we made a recent change, and we've been able to measure it. And we can see, okay, this is much more effective than it was before. So again, basing those decisions on real data so that you can have confidence in improvements over time. And then finally, blocked exit detection. This is an example of an individual feature of which we have a few others. The blocked exit detection applies mostly to something like OSHA, an OSHA violation. So, you know, you can't have boxes or anything impeding an entrance or an exit. And so in this case, it will send you a notification saying, hey, look, there's a violation at this particular location. This is something that you're going to want to tend to. We have had a lot of feedback from a lot of clients, and that's where our development comes from, how we choose what to develop next. They say, hey, look, this is a big headache of ours. We're having to spot check cameras to find this kind of thing. Can you guys develop something that would help us out with that? So we're working in about 40,000 different locations across retail, restaurants. In cannabis, it's about 1,300. And we get that feedback from all these world-class organizations saying, this is what's most important to us. This is the lowest hanging fruit. Help us develop something that's cost effective, that can help us to address this issue. And that's what we do. And that's how our platform is put together.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that the area search. So in investigations, we have clients all the time. You know, you can check POS transactions, seeing the information from Sweed come up and that at the register. But what if it's back in the inventory area where you're like, I know I had product in this area. So what our clients have done is they take the tool, circle the area, and show me any traffic that showed up, you know, within a time period, 30 days, 2 weeks. And once you do that, it just all the videos pop up. Where historically, I'd have some sit there and kind of feed through the feed to see when something's come up. So just a time saving from that feature set. So we're going to go into another video. This one, Cal, you want to give some background before I run it?
You're good. You're good.
Okay.
I'll talk over it. So this is a pretty quick video, and it's showing some line crossing. So this is just a straight up demonstration of what this tool looks like. You jump into one of your cameras, you select the line crossing function. We're just going to draw this line. Boom. And then I can see traffic in and out. So you can see how the numbers on the right-hand side populated as soon as the line was drawn. You can put that anywhere you'd like. It could be at an entrance and exit. It could be, again, in certain aisles. This right here is a restaurant example. We're pretty prevalent in that industry as well, where efficiency is really quite critical, right? And we're able to bring those learnings from that industry over to cannabis as well. And as you can see, it'll give you a number of, hey, how many people are in the store right now, conversion rate, and the average revenue per customer. So it starts giving you basic data. I mean, talk about a really straightforward metric that gives you kind of a starting point. It's like, how many people are coming in the door and how many of those people are actually making a purchase? And then what we're seeing right now is the data being populated on our dashboard, and it's giving you average occupancy per hour, average revenue per customer, a lot of data that's going to help you once again to make decisions to optimize your operations.
Yeah, that's great. And let's go over to this next slide, because I think the next one really does a nice job of, let me go to the next one here.
Yeah, this is the Sidekick tool, and it does provide a little bit of background as it goes through. So different templates that allow you to select ones that we've pre-built, and then you're able to click on one of them, and all you're going to do is select a number of cameras that you'd like involved in this particular spot check. So you can do live spot checks where it's like, hey, in this moment in time, maybe you have a ton of cameras, right? We work with cultivators. They got literally 800 plus cameras or lenses at a single site. It's like, I could sift through those 800 cameras, or I could ask a quick question and have it tell me. And similar to our data integration with Sweed, where we can reactively say, hey, find this for me right now. I can also create a scenario where I'm automating this and saying, hey, every hour, check for these things, right? So again, just on the cultivation side, for example, are my team wearing the right equipment on a regular basis? Is there anybody within the facility right now who isn't equipped with what they're supposed to be equipped with? Or maybe it's on the retail side, right? And I want to know, are there customers present where, there's no bud tender at the cash? at the register while there's a, a bud tender within the retail space, things like that. So it's just like making sure you have eyes on your business and that information is being sent to you directly so you can spend your time on things that are more relevant to your business.
And what's interesting about that is that we have clients that use it. Right now, we have a client that the CEO has access to it, so he goes into the tool on his phone and says, "Is my store messy?" Right, and then it goes through the cameras and pulls up and shows them areas that need to be cleaned up. So he calls down to the store. It's just been interesting how the dynamics of what you offer here is more than just like we talked about. So you want to talk about this? Just a real quick example, and then we get into questions.
Yeah, frankly, I touched on a lot of what our clients enjoy about working with us. Sharing clips as a very simple example, reviewing transactions. Typically, when people see the integration with the point of sale, kind of like the first video example that we showed, it's kind of like, wow, like I didn't know that this type of technology existed. And there's usually a glaring opportunity to save time and to, again, limit the number of instances where smaller issues are slipping through the cracks. So just a couple brands here. Obviously, cookies, I'm sure most people are familiar with. Obviously, we're working with a number of other brands, but only so many give us the go-ahead to share their logos. And Tim, obviously, you can speak to it as well, but hopefully that gave you a good overview of what Solink does and also spoke to just the benefits of both our tool and Sweed, how we're integrated together and how we're end to end. So it's a limited number of tools that you need, and that limited number of tools provide you with not to be too repetitive, but an end-to-end solution for full visibility into your business in a very streamlined and efficient way.
Oh, that's great. So we've got several questions, and I'm gonna ask the question, and then Rocco or Cal, and I'll chime in where necessary. But one of the first questions we got is, what's the biggest vulnerability retailers should be aware of? AKA, if a retailer is going to make one change today, what would you recommend that be? And that, it's a pretty broad question, but Rocco, do you want to add any insight or answer to that from your side?
It's a little bit of a loaded question, Tim. But again, I think I'll probably rest back on the data portion of things. Again, if you're looking at consolidating your stack, I would strongly think about where your customer data is going to live, where your operational data is going to live, how you're going to use that. And then depending on what system and market you're using or where you're operating, from that point, you can make the most intelligent decision about what to change first. But start with the data.
How about you, Cal?
Yeah, I think it's really obvious on our end. And what it comes down to is compliance theater. It's the idea that you're required to have a number of pieces to meet compliance. And so a lot of people say, well, I need a camera system. It has to, record for this number of days. I need a point of sale system. I need, access control, whatever the case is. And they're ticking boxes. And it's like, okay, I'm meeting everything I need for compliance. I'm a compliance system, right? But when it comes to the actual day-to-day usage and being efficient with these processes and actually leveraging them to help your business, that is where I think the biggest area of improvement is across the majority of organizations, whether you're just starting or already in operation.
Yeah, and the question really, there's so many areas of the business, the biggest vulnerability. I would always tell you got to look at your employees first to see activity. I think using the data from Sweed and potentially if it's integrated with Solink on who are your top sellers, who are the ones not selling, who are the ones not doing BOGOs, buy one, get one, not upselling. I think you have the opportunity, when I say financial vulnerability, that you could get more out of the systems if you analyze the data in these systems. What is the number one differentiator between successful retailers and unsuccessful retailers and how they use these systems? I'll touch on a second. What we see in the years we've been in the business is clients that have the disparate system and they're not connected. Really, there's so much data you're getting in the compliance in the cannabis industry from a retail perspective. And it's having the tool set to push that notification stuff to you, right? I think the issue is that we get so busy that at the end of the day, we don't take the time to try to go in if the systems aren't integrated to get this data. So you run in a mode of never continuous improvement because you're just sitting there trying to run business. Where I think on the integrated systems with the technologies that Sweed has developed from the POS and everything else they are offer within their CRM to Solink, is that you start pushing that information out to individuals so that they can be reactive and proactive instead of me trying to find something after the fact or going there. What about either Rocco or Cal? What's the number one mistake you see retailers make in these areas and from that perspective?
I would go with engaging with the vendors, engaging with your partners. So with Solink, it's like the people who do the best, the people who are the most successful, we're working with them all the time, right? They're reaching out and they're saying, hey, I could use hand with this. I could use clarification on this. Can you help me set this up? They're looking proactively for training so they can optimize their usage of our systems. So that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
And Rocco, on your side, just successful versus unsuccessful retailers in using your systems?
And using our system specifically, I think I would actually kind of say the same thing as Cal did. Like a system's only as good as your use of it. And the people who lean on us the most are the people who happen to be the most successful. So you sort of a cornerstone of our business and why we're different than a lot of the other offerings out there from a point of sale perspective is that we're not a platform. We just want to power your technology. We actually want to be your technology partner and we kind of view ourselves as a part of your team. So the extent to which you utilize that makes a huge difference.
And I'm going to add one other thing, thinking through all the technology systems we interact with all of our clients. Outside of having great technology is having great support. I would challenge you when you're looking at vendors, whether it's Sweed or Solink or other vendors, get the references and talk to the references about how easy it is to get support. Can I get a live person on the phone? I know with my interaction with Solink, because compliance never sleeps, right? So in the middle of the night when something happens, clients can get on their chat window, add a chat, and within 10 or 15 minutes or right away, they're getting an answer and someone's on top of the issue. Whereas in other vendors, we have experiences, it's hard to get someone live or they just push us to write through chat or email from that perspective. So one of the questions which I think is interesting is what's on the horizon for Sweed and Solink? So Rocco, you talked about all the things you guys are doing and all the benefits to the client. What's coming down the pipe for you guys?
Sure. So I'll answer that in two ways. I'll sort of give you an answer from our company perspective and then a product perspective. So from our company perspective, we've really focused on the enterprise market for most of our existence. And just this year, we've started to reach out and talk to and start to onboard some more SMB and medium-sized customers throughout the country. So I think you're going to start to hear our name a lot more. We're going to start to be a lot more involved in events and webinars like these. But from a product perspective, there's obviously going to be a huge emphasis on AI. I'm biased, but I think that we probably have the best leading features of any of the either e-commerce marketing or point of sale companies that are out there in terms of how we're using AI. And I expect to see a lot more of that. I think that there's also going to be an added emphasis on inventory procurement and the process of restocking your inventory and working with vendors in that way. I think we're going to see a lot of cool stuff come out in that regard sort of towards the end of the year. Some of these things revolve around partnerships we have with other companies, so I can't speak to them too much, but hopefully that gives you an idea of where the puck is going, so to speak.
No, that's great. And Cal, with all the stuff you guys are already doing, and I know just like Sweed, you guys rely on customer feedback and when customers bring you a challenge that you guys haven't thought about. So what are the things on the horizon for you guys at Solink?
Yeah. So what I find is we occupy a space where, if you could choose any features you want, like imaginary features, right? When people talk about AI, it's often like, I find that, or the reaction is commonly like their head jumps into like, Minority Report or like some Hollywood movie where it's like, oh, we're going to be able to do, imaginable things. Like there's no limitations, right? And sure, you can actually do quite a bit with AI today, but it's extremely costly when you talk about the type of processing power that's required to do some of these like really high order tasks, right? And so where Solink lives is how do we bring the biggest value without adding on that enormous price tag, right? And so where we're moving today is tools that I kind of discussed a little bit. So for example, like Rocco said, it's really AI based. It's all about how can we leverage AI to not only identify the issues, but actually categorize them and help them in actually solving those issues to some degree, right? Which at this point is somewhat theoretical, but one example is, okay, let's say you're running through a transaction and you have a certain number of items on your cash countertop, right? And like, let's say there's 3 items there. And there are some variables that are going to be important, right? You can't have like a see-through countertop and a bunch of products directly underneath it that could potentially confuse the camera system, at least in the near term. But you got 3 items on the countertop, and on your receipt, there's only 2 items, right? And so a transaction occurred. Now you're being sent a notification and it's saying, hey, look, there's an issue here. Watch this live video to verify what's happening. And then there's a workflow to say, what kind of issue is this? No, this looks like a training issue, you know? So boom, this goes into the training issue bucket, and that ends up with whoever owns that particular piece of the workflow. So that's actually something, a good portion of that we can do today, but that's an example of going from, hey, we're drawing the line of motion, and then it's letting us know that someone's there, and we know that there was a transaction. Okay, in this moment, I can figure these things out an order of magnitude faster than I could previously, but now we're going to bring it up another order of magnitude where, hey, I don't even have to spend the time doing those things. And this stuff is coming down the pipe, you know, to be extremely exaggerating, but, you know, at light speed right now.
Yeah, and there was a question about how AI is impacting improving these systems. You guys touched on it both, but to me, I see it probably within the Sweed environment, you know, where what are my number one selling products, where I can start asking those questions instead of having to go run reports and see that. That's where I think some of that and if AI makes you nervous, or as Cal put it, you're like, this is too much. I would challenge you to really take advantage of what's in Sweden and Solink to start empowering yourself, because those things that you're pulling reports or data things on a manual basis, you can start asking those questions and getting the results you need. So that's going to save time on that side. Rocco, I don't know if anything from, I know you talked about AI, but anything else on your side on the AI instance for improvements?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned some obvious points there, like, you know, figuring out what's best selling, things of that nature. But I think that really where AI is going to improve things is in 2 areas. One, the personalization for the customers, showing them the right things at the right time. But then 2, automating a lot of the processes that you do on a regular basis. So like figuring out what's best selling is great, but the way that I look at it is like, okay, what are you doing on a weekly basis? You're figuring out what discounts you should be running. And there's some kind of formula or process that you're using to do that. That's something that would be perfect for AI to take over. So you can imagine a world very soon here where instead of like going through this whole process to figure out what you're discounting this week, you just log into your point of sale and it's making the suggestions about the discounts that you're supposed to run, and you can just accept them basically.
That's great. And again, that's getting the most out of the system, and it kind of pushing that notification and technology instead of you training these agents and having to remember all these things, which is great. I'm just going to close it out. We've got 2 minutes left. We pretty much covered all the questions that were asked. Rocco, final thoughts on your side?
Final thoughts, I think, should really just be, hey, if you have further questions or you'd like to learn more about us, you can see our site at sweedpos.com. You can follow the contact form there. You can reach out to myself, rocco@sweedpos.com. But just in general, again, to sort of recap here, 1, fragmented systems cause a lot of pain in retail operations and also in customer experience in the cannabis world. 2, when you think about actually solving these problems, I would do it from a data first perspective, especially with AI around the corner. And then 3, don't sleep on the compliance benefits here. Like Cal said, and has continued to say, compliance should be something that lets you sleep easily at night and focus on other areas of your business. If you're spending a lot of time on it right now, it probably means that your tool set isn't appropriate.
That's great. And Cal, final thoughts?
I mean, Rocco nailed it. I'll just say that, you know, we have conversations where, you know, we hear that people aren't too concerned with a certain level of like errors within the business. And, you know, we all see it. The market's getting more and more competitive. Things aren't getting easier. And so if there's an ability to improve, even if it's marginally, these are the areas that we have to be focusing on. And these kinds of tools that are streamlined across you know, every area of your business are the ones that are going to be able to point those things out. So back to that death by 1,000 cuts piece for extra drama right at the end here. These tools are going to point those things out for you. They're going to eliminate those as being a worry. And like Rocco said, give you that peace of mind. So definitely worth evaluating and seeing, hey, how can we not only keep ourselves afloat, but make sure that our systems, our organization is operating in a way that's entirely sound, so we can be, the tip of the spear. We can be as effective as possible within the industry.
That's great. Well, I appreciate both your guys' time and appreciate Sweed and Solink for inviting me to be a part of this. And again, if you're thinking about, you have an existing POS system, you don't know that it meets all your requirements or an existing security system, I would reach out to the vendors, because transitioning is always a pain. But I think with companies like Sweed and with Solink, it becomes more of a passion and a project to make that transition if you need to. Or if you're looking for new systems, reach out to both of the companies. But thank you for you guys' time, and I appreciate all that you guys do.
Thank you.
Likewise, Tim.
Thank you.